Good morning, everyone. We're just going to give it a minute so that participants can continue to join the webinar.
Welcome those who are joining.
Good morning. Welcome to the National Kidney Foundation's webinar for the Big Ask, Big Give. My name is Chelsea and I oversee programming on the National Kidney Foundation Greater New York team. We're so glad that we're able to gather virtually with you all today and to share this important information. The purpose of today's program is to provide education about donation and transplant and to help you to share your story to find a living kidney donor. If at any time you get disconnected, you can come back and join us using the same link that you were provided when you registered for the webinar. And everyone here, all audience members are muted, but at any time you can submit a question on the Q&A feature and in the chat. Feel free to submit your questions in the chat at any point in time, and we'll make sure that we're able to address as many as we can. And when you received an email with your reminder, you should have also received a packet of handouts in this email. These are handouts that we will reference throughout the event, but if you did not receive these for any reason, I will make sure that I put the link in the chat so that you can access those resources. And I'm going to turn it over to Eliza to kick it off.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chelsea. I am so pleased we are able to partner with the National Kidney Foundation and put on this wonderful event. I want to just take a moment to welcome Dr. Kapoor to the Big Ask Big Give and introduce him. Many of you already know who he is, but he has spent nearly three decades pioneering transplant techniques and clinical achievements at the Weill Cornell NYP Kidney Transplant Program. He has provided life-enhancing kidney transplantation surgery to complex patients with chronic kidney disease and failure. Dr. Kapoor is driven by an unwavering commitment to provide equal access to kidney transplant. He has championed strategies that allow more recipients to receive successful transplant by expanding opportunities for living donor kidney transplantation. These initiatives are transforming the practice of transplant and the very lives of donors and recipients. And we are so pleased he has been able to join. We're just going to go over the growth of our kidney transplant program, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kapoor.
Thank you, Eliza. Boy, you make me feel old. 3 decades. Sounds like a long time. But it's been a great 3 decades, and time has gone by really quickly. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I think you're in for a real treat today. You have really a great group of people here today to speak to you that can speak to you with knowledge, compassion, provide personal experiences that are really valuable. And I hope you take away from this everything that we think it should provide. We feel we are uniquely qualified to speak to you about this area because for over a decade, we have been a leader in live donor kidney transplantation and kidney transplantation as a whole, not only locally and regionally, but also nationally. Oftentimes our program has ranked in the top 5, top 3, top 2 nationally for the work that we've done. And over the last 3 decades that I've been here, there really has been a very simple directive that has kind of guided me, which is really to maximize opportunities for oral transplant patients that come to us. And in that way, I think we've developed a really advanced team that when someone who needs a transplant comes to our program, if there is a way to transplant you and provide an opportunity, I promise we will find it. I think the program today is going to focus on how to find a donor. I think it's a very timely topic because I can tell you over the last 3 decades, even though we perform a lot of deceased donor transplants, living donor kidney transplants, without a doubt, provide the best opportunity for someone to get transplanted. Not only do they allow them to get transplanted sooner, but to me, more importantly, what it does is it provides a better quality of a transplant. We know from all the data that exists that a kidney transplant from a live donor is going to last, on average, 2.5 times longer than a kidney from a deceased donor. And I think, to me, that is the central reason why people need to think about this and explore all their opportunities to make it happen. And we're here to help you. And you got a great program today to kind of guide you through this. Please take notes, ask questions, and even afterwards, members of our team are available to help you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Eliza.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kapoor. He greatly summarized the mission at our program, which is maximizing opportunities for kidney transplantation. And so our program has many unique strategies, and we will speak about some of those today. Our living donor program and our partnership with the National Kidney Registry. After all, we are the founding transplant center. Today, we will speak about Kidney for Life and the Advanced Donation and Voucher Program, as well as patient microsites, which is a unique opportunity for you to create a free website and help spread the word. We also are transplanting patients that are more complex. We have experience matching deceased donor organs with transplant candidates that may benefit from HCV positive organs, pediatric organs. Today is really about living donation, but we just wanted to highlight some of the unique opportunities and our dedicated multidisciplinary team. So please stay tuned and welcome our panelists, Gisela Delgado and Mike Lolo. We are so honored to have these guys joining us today. They have now participated in the Big Ask Big Give. This is our third event. Third event with them, and I'm just so honored to welcome them. Gisela is our first panelist. She was diagnosed with IgA nephropathy at the age of 14. Ultimately, it led to her kidney failure at the age of 38, requiring a kidney transplant. Fortunately, she was able to avoid dialysis and receive a preemptive transplant from her brother after creating a powerful website and social media campaign, which I'm very excited that she's going to be able to talk to us about today and really encourage and hopefully inspire you to amplify your voice and share your story. She is an impressive woman, to say the least. She wears many hats as a kidney transplant advocate, brand director for the IgA Nephropathy Foundation, and she's the director of creative operations at Equinox. She is one heck of a woman. So thank you, Gisela, for joining us. I am also proud to introduce Mike Lolo. In 2008, Mike tried to help an NYPD officer who needed a transplant, but unfortunately he was not a match. But after seeing a Times Square billboard about a man searching for a kidney, he was inspired to donate his kidney to a stranger. So Mike, again, extremely impressive. He currently serves as Chief Strategy Officer for the National Kidney Registry. He previously served as president of the NKDO, the largest living donor organization in the world. He is a 21-year veteran of the NYPD, who before his retirement served as a detective in the Intelligence Bureau, protecting foreign and domestic diplomats and their mission in New York against terrorism and other threats. He enjoys mentoring and supporting individuals who are considering becoming living kidney donors. He is an incredible advocate, and I really hope today we can extract all of his words of wisdom and pearls about the process. So please take advantage of these two incredible panelists who have taken time out of their busy schedule to join us. We are so honored and profoundly thankful that they are here today. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to Chelsea.
All right, and I'm just going to introduce the speakers that are on the Weill Cornell team that are here today. First is Judith Hamilton. Judith has worked in the transplant field since 1997. She has held the position of Chief Transplant Coordinator since 2009 and has managed both the waitlist and the living donor teams. Judith currently focuses on program improvement projects and outreach and patient education. One of Judith's quotes, "I cannot imagine a more gratifying area to work in medicine. Organ transplant is unequivocally the ultimate form of recycling." Then we also have Aliza today. Aliza Zubov is a living donor kidney transplant coordinator. She joined the kidney transplant team in 2017. The most rewarding part of being a living donor kidney transplant coordinator is reading the letters and messages from the donors that she has helped. A quote from Aliza: "Every story is unique, and if I can be a part of that individual's story, it means the world to us. It's what keeps us nurses going." And then finally, Eliza Bensley started her nursing career in organ donation, working for the New Jersey Sharing Network. She joined the team in 2017, working with living donors, waitlist candidates, and taking donor calls. As nurse educator for the program, she is passionate about health communications, digital transplant outreach, and strategic growth. She is currently working on a certificate in healthcare promotion, media, and marketing from BU. And a quote from Eliza: "If I can help just one person by opening their eyes and breaking down the barriers to transplantation and living donation through education, I feel tremendously fulfilled." So now we're going to talk a little bit about why are we here today. So we are here first and foremost to learn about living donation kidney transplant. As we know, the transplant list is long and the best form is living donation. We're going to discuss strategies to finding a living donor, tips to sharing your story so that it might help you to be able to find a living donor, and then some additional resources. And additionally, family and friends will learn how to be an effective advocate for the kidney patient. But today, let's make sure, please, that we all ask the patient's permission before using the strategies here and sharing their stories. Here we have an example. This is Jeff. Jeff was a kidney transplant recipient who actually was able to identify a living donor after attending this program. So there are additional resources in the resources that you received in the email that have more information on Jeff's story. But you can see from Jeff's quote here that thank you to the National Kidney Foundation for education, preparation, and support in aiding me to communicate my story and to find a living donor. And this here shows you each of the strategies that we'll be going through today in order to find a living donor. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about demystifying some myths about kidney donation, and then we will share some facts about kidney donation so that you can feel better prepared to have a conversation with someone when they ask. We are also going to discuss in depth different tools and resources that you can use to find a living donor. The key to finding a donor is to share your story. So you want to let people know about the person who needs the kidney and how a transplant will help them. If you're not comfortable or ready to write your own story, another idea is to have a family member or a friend write their story for you from their perspective. So today we'll be teaching you how to create your story, how to spread the word, and how to build a network of advocates to help you. You don't have to do this alone, but you can find other family members and friends who can help you with all of these strategies. Also today, we'll be hearing from living donors and transplant recipients about their experiences, Mike and Gisela, and you'll have time to be able to ask them questions. And then we'll close the day out by talking about ways to start a conversation with someone about the possibility of them donating a kidney to you. And you'll each finalize your own personalized action plan of the next steps that you plan to take. We will walk you through everything today so that you'll leave here with specific tools and plans that will work for you. And we're here to support you every step of the way. And I just wanted to, before turning it over to Aliza, thank our sponsor today for making this program possible, CareDx. Thank you to our sponsor. And now I will turn it over to Aliza.
Hi, everybody. I'm Aliza. I'm going to be going over some myth busting and knowing some facts. So just to start, it's important for everyone to understand what living donation is all about. But it's equally important to understand how we can share our story and understanding the facts. So when we're sharing that story, the facts are involved. We're going to do a little quiz and see if some of you can pick out some of our myths that we're throwing out there at you. And hopefully this will help you feel a little bit more prepared when you're creating your story. Next slide. Okay. So kidney failure, dialysis, and transplant. There's a few reminders about kidney failure. Most of you are sitting here today because you either need a kidney yourself, or you are someone's loved one, or you know someone that needs a kidney themselves. You might have a little bit of a baseline of knowledge about living donation and about transplant. So we're just going to start off with some quick reminders. These facts may be helpful to know when you're talking to others about your need or someone else's need for a kidney transplant. So there are 2 treatments for kidney failure. That treatment can be somebody going on dialysis or a transplant. And then when you get a transplant, you can either get a deceased donor transplant or a living donor transplant. Living donor transplants, and I'll talk about that more in the next slide, can be a little bit better than receiving a deceased donor transplant, can improve your quality of life. So we'll move on to the next one, and here's our true or false. Okay. So if you think these are true, I wish I can see you all, but if you think these are true, just have it in your mind, give yourself a little thumbs up or a thumbs down, and then we'll talk about it after. Kidneys from living donors typically last longer than from deceased donors. True or false? You can, the next question is, you can get a kidney transplant before you start dialysis. Do you think that's true or false? Oh, I like this. You can also answer in your chat box. I can see those answers there.
Yes, I was going to say, everyone use the chat box to answer.
Awesome. Yeah, and I can see that chat box. So as soon as I see most people responding back, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. All right. So good job. I like seeing these poll results. Most of you know that while both types of transplants are good, there are some additional benefits from receiving a living donor transplant. So we know that living donor transplants can last longer than a deceased donor transplant. Kidneys from living donors typically work better and they last longer. A deceased donor on average is 7 to 10 years. And from a living donor on average is 15 to 20 years. Keep in mind, this is an average. It goes also about what's the original disease process of a recipient, compliance, following up with their doctor's appointments, their blood works, but these are the average numbers. Okay. And then you don't need to wait for a deceased donor because we have that living donor as an option. Another thing to know is there's the deceased donor wait list, and you are on that regardless. And if you do have a living donor and you get transplanted through a living donor transplant, you're actually making that deceased donor wait list shorter for everyone else because you're no longer waiting for a kidney because you received from a living donor kidney. Okay. Oh, we jumped to the next slide. Okay, sorry. Key to move forward. Okay, so our next true or false. A kidney donor is usually in pain for about 3 to 4 months after surgery. Is that true or false? I'm just looking in the chat box to see everybody's answers. So a kidney donor is usually in pain for about 3 to 4 months. True or false? And then the second question is, a kidney donor will usually be in the hospital for about 1 to 2 nights after the surgery. Okay, so most living donors have a laparoscopic procedure, which means it's a very small incision that will be made. It typically allows for a faster recovery and less pain. So on average, 3 to 4 months is false. That is a long time to have some pain. On average, our donors maybe go home with some pain medicine and can take it for about a week. But other than that, general Tylenol works. Some don't take any pain medications at all. The usual hospital stay is 1 to 2 nights. A full recovery takes about 4 to 6 weeks. Pain medication is needed for a short time after surgery. There are some risks to being a living donor, which you will be made aware of, and that's something that we review with all donors during their evaluation process. Another thing that we do at Cornell is a nerve block. This kind of numbs the abdomen for our donors, so they're not so heavily reliant on pain medication for the first 24 hours. There is always the team and the nurses available to kind of help manage the donor's pain for that first 1 to 2 nights in the hospital. So when they go home for that 1 to 2 weeks, they're better prepared to manage their pain. And then some of the risk with living donation. Every surgery has a risk of bleeding, risk of infection. These are all minimized with having a laparoscopic procedure. There's always a chance that you can get a hernia if you're lifting things too soon. So we say 4 to 6 weeks, no lifting anything heavier than 10 pounds. There's a chance of blood clots, a longer recovery than expected if there's any complications. Then a slightly increased risk of developing high blood pressure long-term, but we always say, every year follow up with the primary care physician, make sure that you know your average blood pressures, and a minimal risk of developing kidney failure after donation, which is in less than 1% of the people that donate.
Aliza,
Yes.
I just wanted to say, as a living donor, this is all 100% true. And
Thank you,
I
Mike.
had my donation at Cornell and I got the block, and I did not need to take, although this is my own personal experience, everyone's experiences are different. I did not need to take any medication except for Tylenol after I left the hospital. So 100% accurate.
Thank you for sharing. It's helpful for people to really understand that, yes, it's a big surgery for the donors, but the pain is managed and it's minimal.
And Cornell
certain
does a
people.
phenomenal job. Yeah, you guys do a great job.
Our next slide, so true or false. Again, I'm looking at the chat boxes. Okay. These are ones for long-term effects on donation. So true or false, kidney donors have to take medicine for the rest of their lives. See some answers flowing in. I'm going to throw in some other ones that you can think about. A kidney donor will have to change their diet after donation. A kidney donor can no longer play sports or exercise. A kidney donor can't drink alcohol after donation. A female kidney donor cannot get pregnant after donation. Again, these are myth bustings, true or false. We can move on to the next slide. Nice. So good job. Most of you know that kidney donors do not have to take specialty medications after donation. You kind of have to separate your brain if you are the recipient. This is specifically talking about donors. Recipients will, once they get a transplant, but donors do not have to take medications for the rest of their lives. As we said earlier, a kidney donor will only need pain medication and stool softeners for a short time after the surgery. And after that, a donor doesn't have to take medication. There are no dietary restrictions after donation. A kidney donor can eat anything essentially, but keeping a healthy lifestyle, just like everybody else, a well-balanced diet. A kidney donor should be able to return to regular activities, including sports and exercise, 4 to 6 weeks after surgery. I like to joke around and say, please don't become an MMA fighter, but if you want to go kite surfing and do all these other cool things that you've done before, you can go back to doing that. A kidney donor can drink alcohol in moderation. That being said, drinking too much alcohol is dangerous for anyone, and there's a greater risk of dehydration when you have one kidney, especially immediately post-operatively. And then your follow-up, we really want you to minimize that if you could. A female kidney donor can get pregnant after donation, although they should probably wait around 3 to 6 months to become pregnant after donation, ideally a year if possible. The body needs time to recover from this kind of surgery and adjust to living life with one kidney, especially if you're becoming pregnant. So you can see living donors go back to, proceeding with their normal lifestyle, quality of life that's average to any other adult. According to a national survey, 1 in 4 Americans would donate their kidney if they knew someone was in need. And life with one kidney is virtually the same as life with 2 kidneys. If a donor develops kidney failure, he or she immediately gets extra points on the waiting list. And then this will be discussed also, but at Cornell, we're participating with Kidney for Life through the National Kidney Registry. So they're also prioritized for a living donor kidney through Donor Shield. Evaluation, and that we'll discuss a little bit later. Evaluation for donation includes a complete physical with the most type of advanced tests, so CT scan, chest x-ray, EKG, slew of blood work that's similar to what you would get during a physical. Follow-up care is provided 6 months, 1 year, and 2 years. We test your blood and your urine to make sure it's adjusting appropriately. And a living donor's medical expenses from the surgery standpoint are paid through the recipient's insurance, including Medicare.
Aliza, can I comment?
Yeah.
Another reason why Cornell is so phenomenal. So Cornell's evaluation process is, for the most part, a one-day workup. And for a donor, that is huge. So I only went to Cornell for the one-day workup. I went to Cornell 1 week before my surgery to get some final bloods. And then I showed up a third time and they took my kidney out. So there's, some hospitals that aren't like Cornell. It could take months, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months to get all the testing done. But they really do a phenomenal job with the evaluation. I think that's a key to part of their success, is because they're able to get the donors through the process. So I just kudos again to Cornell, and just for anyone that's listening, the evaluation process, I think, is really an important part, because the donor's got to take time off of work or take away from their family. And by having it condensed down to pretty much one day, it allows donors to move through a lot quicker.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, we really try and understand that a donor is doing this out of the kindness of their heart. So if there's any way that we can lessen the amount of time off from work or away from family to help their schedules and know if they're cleared or not cleared, that's what we want to do for the donors. Okay, our next true or false. All right, last set of questions. All of these, again, are about living donors. Also, the person who is donating one of their healthy kidneys, true or false, a kidney donor cannot be older than 60 years old. Looking at the chat box, true or false, a kidney donor cannot be older than 60 years old. A kidney donor must be the same age as the recipient. I see some good answers flowing in here. A kidney donor doesn't need to be the same blood type as the recipient. That one's a curveball. Oh, that was a good answer. I like that last one. True, although preferred. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, who can be a kidney donor? As most of you noted, living kidney donors do not have to be just young people. A healthy person that is over the age of 60 can be a living donor and have no problems from the surgery. The kidney from a donor that's older than 60 can work well. Age is but a number. It just depends upon what your kidney function level is. Most cases, a donor does not have to be at least it's 21 years old at Cornell. So our age cutoff at minimum is 21. But each transplant center does have their different requirements. An evaluation will determine if a candidate is healthy enough to be a donor. We also talked about, do they have to be the same age? Research has shown that transplants can work well, even when there's an age difference between the donor and recipient. So an example of that can be a mother to a son. obviously an age difference there, but that kidney can work just as well as someone else that's a similar of age giving to that son. You may not have known this, which is why I said it was a curveball, but a donor's blood type does not always need to be the same as the recipient for the transplant for it to work well. For example, a person with the blood type A can donate to a person with a blood type AB. Okay, so there are certain things, especially here at Cornell, that we're exploring to optimize getting people transplanted. So we do ABO incompatible transplants. We can desensitize, which is bringing some antibody levels down to open an opportunity for a recipient. But if you are a donor and you want to donate to somebody, always the first step, we'll just move forward from there, because we can do incompatible transplants or go through the paired exchange program through the National Kidney Registry. Okay. All right, so paired exchange. I just mentioned this previously on the other slide, that if you are not compatible, so let's say the recipient is a blood type O and you're a blood type A and you can't give directly to them, we can go through the paired exchange program. In some cases, oh, sorry, I just repeated myself. If a living donor is a poor match for their chosen recipient, I think Judith just answered a really good question in that poll about this. They can do an exchange with another recipient or donor pair to get a better match. So for example, say that you want to donate to your daughter, but you're not a match, you're not a blood type match. These are just some ways that can take place. And someone else wants to donate to their best friend, but they're not a match. So we can do the next click. You might be a match for that other person's recipient, and their donor might be a match for your daughter, so for your recipient. So you can proceed the next clickings on the slide so they can see that visual. There we go. And that way you guys can swap kidneys. So both people are receiving transplants, even though their donors are not directly compatible with them. This is just a small snip of how being not compatible can help. Judith had mentioned just a good part in the chat that sometimes you may be blood type compatible and you're a compatible pair, but your sizes of your kidneys don't match. So you can even go into the exchange program to get a better size match kidney. So that's something else to further we can explore also. So this is just some extra information. Always feel free on the side that we can explore this further, especially during an evaluation process. These are just center specific information for us. So while Cornell Transplant Program has one of the nation's largest experiences with living donor kidney transplantation, being one of the largest living donor kidney programs on the East Coast, we have had a high volume living donor program in the United States for over the past several years. We have a dedicated team of specialists whose sole function is to care for the living donor and ensure that the donor's best interests are protected. Our teams are very separate. Recipient has their own team, donor has their own team. The health and the emotional well-being of the living donor is the first priority of the Living Donor Kidney Center. We offer unique opportunities to our patients. So Kidney for Life is kind of what I mentioned previously. This is through the National Kidney Registry, better matches, fewer graft failures, opportunity for reduced immunosuppressive medications. We are now exploring further into eplet matching. Next slide. So our next slide is for Donor Shield. I really encourage all of you to, and you'll see the web link later on, to go to the Donor Shield website so you can fully, each one of these, learn more. There's a tab that you can open up and review it further. Donor Shield offers a comprehensive support and protections for living kidney donors. Becoming a living donor is a generous gift that can save someone's life. And while kidney donation is a very safe procedure, the entire process does involve a time commitment, potentially include traveling and time off of work, and some element of risk. Donor Shield is a comprehensive program designed to protect living kidney donors, make kidney donation easier and more convenient, and offer support through every step of their journey. So the ones I primarily pointed out was down the line, a living donor kidney, if they ever needed a kidney, the donor ever needed a kidney themselves. But it's definitely an option we'll discuss further. And I really encourage you to go to the website to view this more. So an evaluation to be a living kidney donor, similar to what Mike had referenced before. Every donor must undergo a vigorous evaluation to assess their suitability to be a living donor. But we're also trying to accommodate the donors at the same time. Everything in one day: CT scan, chest X-ray, EKG, blood work. We're looking to see, are the donors at a higher risk of developing kidney disease themselves? Is there any chronic underlying health problems that, maybe they don't know of, but we've discovered? Could they develop diabetes, hypertension, obesity, either now or in their future? We always, from not just a medical standpoint, but a psychosocial standpoint, want to make sure that a donor is never feeling coerced or pressured into donating. Again, teams are completely separate. Recipient has their own team, donor has their own team. We do not relay any information to the recipients. It's not putting the donor at any socioeconomic risk for themselves to, come forward, be off for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, depending upon their job. And the first steps that every person sitting here and watching, if you have a donor, have them go to this registration link. As much as you want to help and guide them through the process, have them, the first step is fill out the donor registration. Within 24 to 48 hours, a living donor coordinator will reach out to that donor once they completely fill out their questionnaire, and then we review the steps from there. What's their blood type? What's the recipient blood type? So it dives a little bit deeper. So I definitely say leave it to the living donor coordinators and the donors directly, that they can contact us. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Eliza. I do see we have some attendees raising their hands, and I do want to give everyone an opportunity to take a moment to chat in the box. Any questions they have. Eliza just went over a tremendous amount of information in a very short amount of time. It is, it can be very overwhelming, and the process can be a little, difficult sometimes. So if you feel like you need any reinforcement of this information, our team can always give you a phone call afterwards and just help explain the process. But I think you did an amazing job. Please, I see we have one more hand raised. Please make sure you're just putting it in the chat box. I wish I could give everyone access to speak, but there's some limits with the recording. So just let us know. And then I just want to take a moment to make sure we had some tech issues getting people on. I just want to see if we can.
So there's a question, is Kidney for Life and Donor Shield a national program? So the Kidney for Life is a program run through the National Kidney Registry. Over 100 transplant centers participate in the National Kidney Registry. Not every transplant center does. So if that transplant center does not participate with the National Kidney Registry, NKR, they do not get that Donor Shield protection. At Cornell, yes, we participate all in with the National Kidney Registry and have Donor Shield protections for our donors.
Amazing. And yeah, Gisella's right. This is a lot of information.
And I'm trying to summarize it, making it smaller for you guys, but yeah, it's a lot.
All right. So
Thank you.
Again, thank you so much, Eliza. You are a wealth of knowledge. And please, again, if you have questions later on, write to us. We can always do some extra teaching afterwards. We don't expect everyone to be an expert in this with, a 2-hour webinar. It's a lot. So we're going to be providing some resources at the end, and obviously all of our contact information. So let's talk about creating your story. We covered myth busting and just covering the facts. And I think something I just really want to drive home is if you are comfortable and confident in talking about living donation because you know the facts and you can bust any myth, it's the likelihood of you bringing it up to people and your friends and family around you, it's higher because you are confident in what you are sharing. So making sure all of the information that you have is factual is really key. We don't want to perpetuate any myths, and we want to make sure everything is clear. So let's talk about creating your story. Before we get into, some of the strategies the NKF has provided, I want to go over a real life example, and I really want to turn over the mic to Gisela. We are going to learn a lot about her experience, but if she wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of a summary on how she decided to start this website and why, and what details she included, and why this website and this social media, campaign that she had created worked. I would love that because Gisela has had experience helping people, which we will learn in a couple slides because we're going to show an amazing video of her journey. But Gisela, do you mind giving us some feedback and tell us your kind of process?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. One, I think it's the most important thing that I acknowledge is that I see all of you virtually out there, and I know what it's like to be a patient on the precipice of dialysis and or transplant. And this is a lot of information, and it is a lot to process your diagnosis and or try to retain all of this. So this is being recorded. There's a ton of resources out there. This isn't like one and done. So just kind of sit with that. Also, I'm a big believer in you believe what you see. So here I am. I'm okay. I went to this session back in 2018. I was you in a real room, and I tried to learn what I could. And I realized something, and I think I want to start with that. One thing I realized by going to the Big Ask Big Give is that I started to share my story. So quick summary, I was diagnosed with IgA nephropathy in 94, which is a autoimmune kidney disease. And it ultimately led to me needing to try to find a donor around 2017. That's when I qualified for the UNOS list. And I started a blog. And this is that blog. And the original name for this blog was called Chronic Habichuelas, because that means like bad kidneys in Spanish. And I thought it was really funny. But what wasn't funny is that no one could ever spell it and no one could ever find it. So it became like a really hard thing to try to get people to this website. But I felt that most of my family friends didn't really understand what I was going through. So I just wanted a place that I could put a bunch of information and do a little blog storytelling. And the reason I created this website was I wanted people to know what I was really looking for and what I needed, because I'm sure all of you have done this. Someone asks you, how are you feeling? And you say, fine, or I'm doing okay, but you're really not doing okay. And I needed a place where I could be vulnerable. And I'll talk about this a lot, and kind of just saying what I really needed was someone to read my story, and not necessarily for that person to want to be a donor, but maybe that person be so inclined to share my story. I think I just saw something in the chat about someone saying our network is really small because you're thinking about everyone that you know or that you think could be, but the casting that net as wide as possible is really, that was the most important thing that I tried to do with this, and make it easy for people to read about me, stay up to date, and understand how they can help. So yes, personally, I wanted everyone who read this to go to that website and register to be a donor. Like, yes, inside I wanted everyone to be a potential donor for me. But the power of networking and word of mouth is amazing. And you never know who will be touched by hearing your story, or maybe somebody knows somebody and then they just keep sharing it. So anyone can create a really wide net. And I will talk to anyone after this with some one-on-one strategy. We can set up time for that. So that's like really high level. I created this space. I'm also a creative marketing professional, so that's why I look super fancy. But I think what the Kidney Registry has done and the microsites is really powerful, giving anyone the power to create a website where you can share your story.
Thank you so much. I mean, again, Gisela, you have a wealth of knowledge. And so we're going to break it down. So this is not, this is not the only time you're going to share kind of your guidance and suggestions, but, creating your story and starting your story, I think it's really important to address that it can be daunting and it can be intimidating, and sharing your health information and putting it out there for the world is overwhelming, and you have to be vulnerable. And so, Gisela, when you decided to just put it out there and let everyone see you, for the situation you were in, you needed a transplant. How did you find the courage to do that?
So I actually was lucky enough. Someone else inspired me,
Mhm.
and then someone actually a living donor who had donated to her husband told me that yeah, like everything is really nice, but you have to tell people, like, what's your CTA? So call to action. Like, what do you actually want people to do when they hear about your story? And that's why I kind of reiterate, like, I think it's very, I have hindsight, and I keep reflecting on that. Like, I can go back to like, oh, I remember when I was doing this and now I'm this. And I know most of you are very much in this moment, but one of the things I wish I did sooner was just tell people what I really needed instead of what I thought was the okay thing to say out loud. I think it's really hard. It's very, I don't know if it's like society, whatever, but asking for help is hard. And I'm a project manager by trade, so it was really hard for me to ask for help and not try to figure out how I can just like deal, like, oh, I'll find a donor by myself. And no, I needed people, and someone inspired me to just be really honest about how people could help me and make it really clear. And I made it really clear that either, please learn more about becoming a living donor, and apply if you want, and or share my story. Those are the two CTAs. I didn't say, hey, go be my donor. And I think the fear of rejection of someone, and that's I think a real thing, is you don't want to seem like a burden and you're asking someone for a kidney, but that's not what you're doing. You're just asking people to share your story and to learn more about living donation. And I think deflecting, which I think Aliza said earlier, like, to the resources, and trust the clinic team, because you don't want to get caught up in the in-between. You're already trying to manage your life. Don't try to project manage people going in and out the hospital, getting tested. They'll do a great job.
Yeah. No.
I think a key, we're probably going to mention it one or two more times, but you don't know where the living donor is going to come from. So you have to share your story. A recent patient of Cornell's, police officer who ended up receiving a kidney through the NKR's voucher program. Her donor lives in Utah, was traveling in Maryland, and saw the story on TV and ended up donating. I talked to people who saw a flyer in the deli. So the point is, I call them sleeper donors, right? There's donors that don't know they're donors. They don't know they're going to be donors. And until they see your story, that's the trigger in their mind that says, I could do that, because that's what happened with this woman, Sophia. She's like, wait a minute, I have 2 kidneys and they're telling me I can give one, or, to help someone. So we're probably going to talk about it a couple of times, but, sharing your story is so important, because you just don't know where that donor could come from.
Yeah, I think you know. Like, I was like, man, I'm Latin. I have like 1,000 cousins, and one of my cousins is gonna come through with this kidney. But like, no, and you think it's gonna be your closest friend or your closest family, but everyone also gets. That's a really good point. Everyone also has to go through the evaluation process to make sure that they are the best donor for you, which is nothing that you can control.
Right.
And you have to get comfortable with that. Like, just let the process work its way out. But yeah, I think I was really surprised by like the people that I work with coming forward. You forget how much time you spend with people that you work with, and then their family and friends coming forward more so than people. Like, you don't know. I wish I knew what that algorithm was, and then I would just like give it to everyone like this. But to Mike's point, the sleepy, I love that. There's people that don't know that they're going to be like, oh yeah, this is a good idea. I'm going to do this now. It's a really good point.
Yeah, you guys are sharing so much wisdom, and I love that we're reiterating the trusting the process and relinquishing control, because as Eliza mentioned, the donor team, it's separate from your team, right? So as a recipient, you have your own coordinator, the donor team has their own coordinators. And so we make sure that that's in place so the donor is protected and moving forward, on their own accord. But there is a lot of trust that has to go into that process. You have to trust that the team is screening the donors appropriately and that we all have, the best intentions. So having that patience and kind of allowing the team to do their job is sometimes hard because, as a recipient, you want to know what's going on. But the donors go through such a thorough evaluation. So our team, you just never want to rule someone out on your own, before you even know, and just trusting that process. So thank you both. I love this discussion. We're learning so much. There's, this slide, there were a lot of key points that we just shared. And, this bit about what made the story compelling or interesting. I want to just say I work with a lot of patients who are, sharing their story, they're creating microsites. And I think that every person has a compelling story. I don't think that you need to have this, wild tale about all the, every person is unique and interesting. And so when you're thinking about writing your story, just be authentic because you are unique, and there is just, maybe this pressure to create this like high level highlight story. And that's just, to me, I tell patients, just be honest and share what their life is like and what they've gone through. And that is, to me, compelling. So being honest and just who you are is the most compelling component. That's something I really want to make sure I reiterate, that you don't need to create this grand story. People can relate to you because you're going through this chronic disease, and that's what makes you unique. So just take the pressure off yourself. I just want to make sure I reiterate that. And so I really think we're hammering this point that the key is to share your story. And there was some information and material sent to you. There's a Starting My Story worksheet in your digital packet that Chelsea had sent out. You can take some time after this program to work on it. I am also here to help you with sharing your story and writing your story if you need some assistance. I also, once we get to the microsite component, I'm going to share the opportunity you have when creating a microsite. You get to work with a donor search coach and mentor. So there's just a lot of resources if you're feeling kind of stuck on getting that story started. But again, it really all goes back to just being yourself and telling your story. That's what makes you unique, and that's what makes this compelling. We're all humans, and we all are, we all go through things. And so you don't have to have this like grand story is my basic point. So now we're going to kind of go over spreading the word. Again, this workshop, as mentioned, it used to be in person. And so we'd have people writing out their story and then we would go through, but since it's virtual, keep in mind, you can write your story after, but once you've written your story, let's talk about now spreading the word and getting it out there, and nailing down the point that sharing your story is the way to go. Start with people and then work your way broader. I think there was a question about someone who said they have a small circle, and I think something to really reiterate is that, yes, your circle may be small, but the people within your circle have circles. So if you share with your Aunt Jo has a community perhaps. And that is the way you get beyond your inner circle, is by just asking family and friends to help share, help spread the word, because you just never know who may cross paths with your story and be inspired. We hear about people who are walking through the airport and listen to a news story on someone who needs a kidney transplant and they're inspired. These stories are incredible. And maybe I'll take a moment to kind of put Mike on the spot here, because he's one of those people who donated a kidney to a stranger, and getting that out there was something, getting that story out there was something you were touched by. So do you mind sharing a little bit, Mike?
Sure. So that's why I say there's like sleeper donors out there. The brief story is I attempted to help a police officer out, and that didn't work out. And then that was it. I would have just gone on with my life. But 4 months later is when I saw the newspaper article about the gentleman that had the billboard. And, the question all non-directed donors or people who donated to strangers get is, why did you donate? So the only answer I can give you is that for some reason, seeing that second story in such a short period of time, when I was 46 years old, I've never heard about kidney donation. I don't know anyone that was on dialysis. I don't know anyone that really had diabetes. I didn't even know it was a thing you could do. But in that second story, like triggered something. I call it like a light switch. So I don't know exactly why. For me, it was just more of, wow, twice in 4 months after 46 years of living, I hear something about living kidney donation. And then I started to do the research and learn more about it. And, I guess that's a medium answer to your question. It's hard to explain exactly why. So that's why the sharing the story is so important, because you don't know what person you're going to catch on what particular day and what they're thinking about. And they may say, I've got 2 kidneys, so why wouldn't I help this person out? And it could happen at any time, at 2 o'clock in the morning, when they were looking at Facebook or Twitter or TikTok or any one of these other type of things, or the flyer in the deli. My wife just became a living liver donor in December, and it was simply an email that the district attorney sent to all the staff saying, hey, there's an assistant district attorney that needs a liver. If anyone's willing to help, here's the information. That's it. That's all she got. She didn't really know the guy. She knew of him. So you don't know what form it's going to come in. I can't really give you an answer of like why or what the trigger is, but for the 15th time, sharing the story is what's really most important.
Yes. Thanks, Mike. And I see a question that says, should the story give perspective of only the donor, or should it be more than one voice? So when we say story, we mean your journey. So as the recipient, why do you need a transplant? What would your life be like once you had a transplant? I think giving key facts about what living donation is, and that, that might be the perspective of the donor, is really important. You really do want to make sure that you're including some living donor information and education, because the reality is a lot of people actually don't even know about living donation. And so we always want to make sure we're not assuming people know that living donation is an option. I've actually heard stories of people coming in and learning about living donation the day they're coming to get listed for transplant. So even the transplant recipients sometimes don't even know. And so I think we never can assume that people know about what that is. And then if there's misinformation or some myths out there, we want to squash that. We want to make sure these people are well informed and coming forward, because they realize they can live with 1 kidney, a full, healthy life. And so the perspective I believe works best is your story as the recipient. And hopefully that answered that question. If that person has more specifics, please add it. So we kind of mentioned this, but many people want to remain private and not let people know they are sick. But if people don't know, they can't help you, simply put. That's really it. It's very clear, and that's a personal decision. You have to be okay with people knowing that and being vulnerable. But if you want action to be taken, you have to let people know. I love this quote, and this is, obviously Gisela. And my number one lesson is, it is not your job to make others comfortable when you're suffering and uncomfortable. That's extra energy that you don't have to spare. So I think what Gisela means is that your job is to get well and find that donor and move forward with that transplant. And so if you feel like putting the story out there is going to make other people feel uncomfortable, that's not your problem, right? Gisela, do you wanna?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a analogy visual person, right? Because I think, especially in this sort of setting, there's so many words, and I use this analogy a lot, and I'm going to keep using it. But if you were in a house and it was on fire, and you needed to save your life, you'd be screaming out the window for someone to come and help you. And I think that, in my personal opinion, there's a lot of assumption that it's okay to wait to go on dialysis. It's okay to wait for someone else to come along and help you. But not to make it so black and white, but when you're in kidney failure and you're on the precipice of dialysis, or you're already on dialysis and waiting for transplant, you need help. You need some saving. And you would never like casually, like, you're in a building and it's on fire, you wouldn't like crack open the window and whisper, but excuse me, if I don't want to bother anyone, but could someone please help me? I'm burning, I'm on fire. You would never do that, right? But for some reason, this feels very different. And I think it has to do with the psychology of fear of being rejected, of you asking someone and someone just flat out telling you to your face. I mean, that's okay. You'll be in the same exact situation that you're in. That's another thing I say, like, the worst thing that'll happen by advocating for yourself is that you'll be right where you are. But the best thing that could happen is now all of a sudden you have someone else who's now advocating for you. It's like building this army around you. And it is exhausting. And that's one of the good things about having a microsite too, is like, you just have a place where you can just have all your feelings and also all the facts. And you can just tell people, hey, just go check my latest. I wrote some, go check it out. You don't have to keep repeating yourself. And it is a lot of effort. And you don't have to pretend to be okay. This is not that time. Like, this is not that time in your life. And as someone who went through this, my biggest regret is I qualified for UNOS in 2017, but I really didn't advocate for myself the right way until like a year and a half later.
Mm.
And I wasted a lot of time. I'm a better person because of it, but my biggest advice is like, don't wait. Like, you definitely want to try to get that preemptive transplant. You want to try to get that net out there as fast as possible.
Yes. Well, and on that note, I really want to share this video that Gisela made while going through her journey. I think it's very powerful, and I appreciate her letting us share this with you guys today. And it really just summarizes what you went through.
All I'm hearing is you have this disease.
Yeah, I don't think there's any sound happening right now.
It started and then it went out.
Sound issue? We have a sound issue?
Yeah, when you first played it, you heard her voice, and then I don't know if it's when you muted or something. It cut
Yeah,
out.
it might be tied to your computer sound.
I apologize, guys. I'm sorry.
And now we can hear it. Don't touch
You
anything.
have this disease. There is no cure and there is no treatment. You're not actually treating the disease because you're really treating symptoms. And that ultimately in 20 to 25 years, it would lead to kidney failure. Even the smallest tasks literally leave you breathless as your kidney function gets worse. Very sluggish, unable to concentrate, unable to do anything, and nauseous all the time. Like, my skin literally turned gray. I lost so much weight. I look like a skeleton just walking around the block, walking, trying to go for a 5-minute walk with our dog, and I'd be super winded all the time. You qualify to be put on the list when you reach 20% kidney function. At the time of my kidney transplant, my kidney function was at 8%. And I don't know how I was functioning at all. I felt terrible. I really, really felt terrible. Transplant day is crazy. You wake up from surgery, you have this sort of this energy. Is it like the rush of, oh my God, I just had surgery? I'm like, no, it's real. It's like, oh, something is working now inside that hasn't been working for a long time, and you feel it. So much brighter now. So that's what Elena has definitely been my biggest rock. When you're married to someone and you live together, there is no hiding, just having someone who's always constantly sort of looking out, creating a safe space. To this date, I've helped about 5 patients find their living donor through social media campaigns. So I feel pretty good about that. Being diagnosed with IgA nephropathy and that there is no cure and there is no treatment, it can also come back after you've had a transplant. And until this disease can be treated, you can't get comfortable. My hope for the future is that the minute you get diagnosed with this disease, your nephrologist knows exactly how they can help you and connect you with other like-minded people. I can't imagine what that would have done for me and my family.
Wow.
So
That's
I
amazing.
want to say, it still like gets me emotional when I see that, but I didn't make this video by myself. I do a lot of advocacy work, and I had a pharma sponsor wanted to tell my story because I do think that the more people the more you see, the more you believe. So I'm just going to keep reiterating this as much as possible. Like, I know it seems overwhelming and it doesn't have to be the most beautiful, creative piece. Sharing your story is your story. You don't need you don't need to sensationalize the fact that you want to live. You don't need like marketing clickbait. You don't need the Sarah McLachlan song playing and sad puppy dogs for people to see you and to know that your life is worth saving. So just really think about that relatability. And sure, when I came to the Big Ask Big Give for me to learn about finding a donor, there was this guy, his name was Rob, and he went viral for wearing like a t-shirt in Disney World that said, I need a living I need a kidney donor. And he went viral. He was like pushing a stroller throughout Disney World when his kids were in it. And I think that makes it relatable, right? There was nothing, he didn't even have to say anything, but you forget that I'm only a patient when I'm in front of the doctor, but I'm actually a patient all the time. Like, whether you're in front of your parents, your loved ones, or at clinic, you still need that kidney. So just share your story. You're in an Uber. I mean, it got to the point, like, even when I was like, honestly, like, Uber ride, and it's like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, did you know that I need a kidney? Like, I would tell anyone, anywhere, on the train, at the coffee shop, because you just don't know who's going to be inspired or motivated, or you might learn something new. Maybe I met, surprisingly, a lot of people who either had a family member who received a kidney and or knew somebody, and it's like all these little bits of information that make it bite-sized and more relatable for you. So please, please, please do not feel like you need to have an award-winning film or any crazy, beautiful website. I mean, a simple open letter that you can share via email and or even print it out in your neighborhood. You never know who will be inspired by reading it and just want to help you.
Yes. Giselle, thank you again. I love that we are just nailing down that it doesn't need to be sensationalized. And I think something that we at our program realize is, accessibility to resources, to getting, sharing these stories. Websites can be expensive, and maybe you're not, the most tech savvy person, or you don't have a marketing background, but we hope that our team, who is dedicated to helping you reach your circle in whatever way, I've worked with patients who just feel comfortable sending out an email, like you said, or a letter or a newsletter. There's some ideas here, talking to family and friends at reunions, sending an email or a letter, posting on social media. Maybe you're not on social media. Maybe social media isn't your thing. I think social media can be used for social media gets a bad rep, let's be honest, but it can be used for good and it can be very powerful. It's also usually free unless you're doing some, $5, $10 boosts, but it's a free tool. So I think if used correctly, social media can be very powerful. Speaking at a community group, maybe your place of worship, your gym, a club. I had a patient who was very involved in a charity organization and sent an email out to their organization. And I do think making things personal, including pictures, and this is really getting into what we're offering, which is a free resource called the microsite. And let me actually just go to the next slide. The microsite program is a free personalized website that we are able to offer our patients in partnership with the NKR. And it is amazing because the site, and I'll show you a sample site, has living donation education embedded in it. And it also has the donor registration link already there. And it's a free site, so you really don't need to be tech savvy. Not only do you get business cards with your URL printed sent to your home, you also get a donor search coach, which is someone who has either donated their kidney, helped someone else find a kidney donor, and is familiar with the process. So it's just a great tool. And if you want to register, you can use your phone right now and scan this, but you can also just contact myself or your transplant coordinator and we'll get you signed up. Here's the sample site. So I love that it's just all there and you can do everything in one fell swoop. And it's really just, again, not a difficult thing to start up. I have patients who are really not tech savvy and we help them get this out there. And it's got social media embedded. So Facebook, Twitter, and email. If someone's looking at this site, they can see if they're qualified and register, and it goes directly to our donor team. So there's no, where do I click? What link do I use? How do I contact? It's right there. This site also gives the person an opportunity to just kind of explain why they need a transplant, what caused their kidney disease, what their life has been like, what have they done? And again, it can be as robust as you feel, and it can be as simple as you feel. I love that there's just options to add photos to really personalize, because I think, again, we're all unique individuals and you don't need this sensational story, but to personalize it really, it humanizes a page of internet, a website. So this explains, why the person needs a kidney, and then it gives more information on how you can help. So by sharing the story, or starting the process. And then it goes into the donor support and protections that Aliza covered at the very beginning. And so it's just great. And again, it's a free source and you'll get a coach. So if you don't have a microsite, please consider making one. I can help you afterwards to get started.
Eliza, can
yeah.
I just make a quick comment?
Yeah.
A couple of things I love about the microsites is
There's so many.
They're simple. People go and they try to create these extravagant websites thinking it's going to impress potential donors and they're going to woo them. What it does is really, it distracts, so you want to tell your story and you want them to either share it or click the button, right? So that's really very important. So that's one of the things I like about this. The other thing is when the donor clicks that button, all the donors, if you were able to get 100 people to click the button, they're uniquely linked directly to you. So all those potential donors are your potential donors, not going to potentially other people in need of a kidney. So that's really, really important. So it encapsulates all those potential donors, and they will be directed in your direction, whether it's through the voucher program or direct donation, whatever the transplant team feels is medically best for you. The other thing I just want to add, pictures are absolutely essential. But if you have wonderful, able-bodied people in those pictures, somewhere in the story should be why they haven't considered donating. So it could be most of the time they're medically ruled out. And that's okay to say that. Unfortunately, my family was tested and they're not, medically eligible. But sometimes when people, will look at a picture, they go, wait a minute, this person's surrounded by 8, strapping, men and women, and, why haven't they donated? So if you're going to use pictures, just make sure in your story somewhere you address, that you went to your immediate family and unfortunately no one is, able to donate.
Yeah. Oh, and then also let's just also touch on the fact that when someone is registered, the donor will get a mentor.
Yes, my goodness, can I forget that? That's true. So just like the microsite coaches help the patients through the process, every one of your donors has the opportunity. It's not mandated. If they don't want to speak to someone, they don't have to, but they have a mentor. Could be someone just like myself who's been a living kidney donor, and they were able to answer all the questions. I always said I had one of the best transplants coordinators in the world, but she still had her 2 kidneys. So she could tell me what donors have told her, what the process was like, but she didn't actually go through the process, herself. So it was really helpful to me. She gave me someone to speak to as a mentor, and I thought it was really helpful. And it put my mind at ease. And when I ended up getting to the point where I was having the surgery, I kind of, dare I say, was relaxed because the hospital answered all my medical questions. And the mentor answered all those other kind of crazy questions, like, how soon before I could go to the bathroom, or did this hurt, or, for the men, what was it like to have a catheter in? Because all men, that's what we don't want, a catheter. Like, it's like the one thing every male donor I've ever spoke to is like, oh my gosh, I heard about the catheter. I almost didn't donate because I was afraid of that. I'm like, don't worry, they put it in when you're asleep. So, you don't have to worry about that. Take it out when you're awake, but that's an easy process. But yeah, donor mentors are another key part of the process.
Yes. Well, thank you. Guys, we just want to check in. If you feel comfortable typing in the chat box some strategies that you have extrapolated from this presentation. And, if you want to write, if you don't, it's okay. We can have you kind of take notes and put this, pen to paper afterwards. But that's something I just want to give everyone like a little bit of time to do right now before we turn it over to Judith, who is going to talk about building a network of advocates. So feel free to type this in, and I'm going to hand over the microphone to Judith. Judith, you are muted. Just want to let you know.
So sorry, my phone has been ringing off the hook and I've got it on silent, but you can still hear it. So good morning. Obviously, I was introduced earlier. My name is Judith. Thank you all for joining. Glad to have you on. And let's move right on in. Let's talk about building your advocates. So circles of influence. The way I like to describe this, you're not in this alone. You think of all the connection and relationships that you have. Well, so let's say you've just got 5, but then those 5 people, they each have 5 people each. So think of it like a ripple effect. You just talk to a few people and they talk to a few people and you get to so many people very, very quickly. So, how comfortable are you sharing your story? Maybe that is a problem for you, and it is easier to let someone else, share that. If within your circles, either your inner circle, which is your close family, people you speak to pretty much every day, or whether it's the outer circle, and you can see all the different people you're really exposed to, it's a high number. Anyway, so if there's people within this circle of influence not able to donate a kidney themselves, they can help. They can be the ones that are putting the word out. They can champion your cause. So, it's all the ideas within these circles may not work for you. You may not be a member of the YMCA, but you're probably a member of something else that we don't have up here. So, again, let this sort of stimulate your thought process and all the people that you can really get your story out to. Do you work? If so, where do you work? Does your employer have a newsletter? Do they have a bulletin board? Find out if your community groups have newsletters. Even if you don't have a direct relationship with someone, Maybe your friend or your family, they do, and they can share that story. The more your story is shared, the greater the chance that you've got of having a living donor step forward. And this cannot be stressed enough. The word needs to get out there. You know, I look at this and the first thing I think of is when I see social media. I cannot tell you how many donors have been found through Facebook. I'm not a big social media person. I don't post anything myself. But if I were in a situation like this, that would be one of the first things that I would turn to. It's a very, very powerful tool. So it's free, use it. Is there a specific group that does stick out to you? You know, it may be that you're a part of a Block community. Maybe that's the way, that's a big group that you can get to. Is there something, again, that we're missing that you can think of that, you know, is appropriate for you, but we haven't put up, you know, on this diagram? And just ask yourself, which group am I comfortable sharing my story with? It may be a more limited group, but the more you can do, the better off you'll be. Next slide, Eliza. So again, back to our experts.
Thank you so much, Judith. Yeah, we're gonna ask Mike and Gisela kind of who were your biggest supporters through the living donation and the transplant process? And Gisela, you know, how did you decide on who your network of advocates would be? And yeah, that's kind of, I know it's a twofold question, but I think it's important to reflect on both ends, you know, the donor and the recipient support. So Gisela, why don't you go first, and then Mike, you can answer.
Yeah. There's a quote that one of my I call my kidney sisters, someone that I've met over the years, that she says, like, you know, the weight when you're going through this process is real, and it's double, right? It's like like it feels heavy, and it's also like time, right? And I was exhausted a lot. Chronic fatigue is real. I'm sure a lot of patients can relate to that. And one of the things, I think it was like, how am I going to cast this net like by myself? And again, I was like advised by someone who had been a living donor and was a kidney champion. And she said, you know, think of all those and she basically showed me something very similar, like think about this circle. And it was, you know, think about walks of life, even if, like, where did you go to high school? Where did you go to college? What's your, do you go to a deli all the time? Like, is there some place, where do you work? Can you put a flyer up? So I tried to come up with sort of like a little, a mini army of 5 people from different walks of life that can then help me. And I know that's hard when people feel like they're doing this, but that was one of the first things I did. And I had, you know, my partner was there as someone to help connect with my family directly. I had my best friend since I was 12. She helped. I had a friend that was very in the arts community in Jersey City. I had a current coworker, and then I had one of my roommates from college. And I felt like between that group of people, they could help spread the word. And it also was kind of interesting when I will say that, you know, people don't know, if they don't know what you're going through, they can't help you. I feel like me even reaching out to them, they didn't realize how serious my situation was until I was like, I need you to help me get my story out. Because there's this assumption that people are always going to know exactly how you're feeling, especially with kidney disease. If you're not on dialysis, you might look okay. If you don't have a fistula or anything, people assume that you're okay. And if you're still smiling and laughing, it's like, oh, you're not that sick, you still have time. So for me, that was like the first thing, was strategizing and just getting people to advocate on my behalf, because I was just too tired to do all that work by myself. And it did help. I mean, I ended up on the radio randomly, like Light FM or something. I was like listening, and someone was telling my story, and I was like, wait a minute, like, how the hell did that happen? And it was like someone wrote a letter on my behalf, and I still don't know who did it. So that's what I mean by like sharing your story. You never know who might share something, and it's kind of interesting. It's very powerful. If you live in a building, especially in the city, just leaving a flyer in a lobby. Also, the QR code had the comeback of the decade. Very easy for people to scan a QR code and lead to your microsite. I think that is amazing. So powerful. But yeah, just making it easy for people to learn about what you're going through and how they can help.
Thank you so much. Also, before Mike starts, I just want to thank our attendees for participating. I see someone mentioned that they brainstorm many networks to share with essential components of a story and a microsite. So I'm happy this is helping kind of turn the light switch on and getting you thinking and just maybe pushing the boundaries of your comfort zone. Hopefully you're feeling inspired and encouraged. And while we have Mike and Gisela, two people who really, they walk the walk, they know they can talk the talk, make sure you ask them questions. So Mike, what was your support like? Because I think it's really important that the donor feels supported.
So it starts with, and I know I donated at Cornell and I sound like a mouthpiece for Cornell, but they did such a great job. And for the donor, it's really important. So it started with, she's not there anymore, but she's still a transplant coordinator, Marion Charlton, my transplant coordinator. I mean, just from day one, made me feel comfortable. She gave me her personal cell phone number. You have any questions at any point in the day, and that still continues with the coordinators that are there now. And that makes a huge difference, when I spoke to, but everyone through my evaluation process, they made me feel, important. They made me feel that like they cared about me, to answer all my questions. I have a lot of questions. I was emailing my coordinator all the time, or I was texting her. So it starts with the transplant center. And, I tell donors all the time, if you're not comfortable, then maybe you should go someplace where you do feel comfortable, because you are going to be having a, procedure done there. But Cornell does a phenomenal job. So it starts with that. And then, the family dynamic, which is a whole nother thing. So all I really cared about was my wife, and she was extremely supportive from day one. She was encouraging. One person I told, my boss at the time, a lieutenant, said, well, what would, we're going to donate your kidney. Like, well, you have 3 kids. Don't you want to save your organs for your children? And I didn't even think about that, to be honest. And I was like, oh man, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's something I should do, like hold on to all these things, right? And I went home and I talked to my wife about it, and I said, oh, you know what, my lieutenant said, and this was very early on in the process, and that one moment totally took everything away, all kind of anxiety that I may have had. And I said, listen, this is what he says, save the organs for the kids. And she says, you know what, Michael, God forbid one of our children ever needed an organ or kidney. I would hope that someone would come forward like you're doing for this person. So I just got chills saying that, but it was just like, wow, I'm like, you're right. And then you go to find, again, I'm not the medical professional, but the likelihood, I have no kidney issues. My parents don't have kidney issues. My grandparents don't have kidney issues. My wife doesn't have kidney. So the chances that one of my children would need a kidney is very remote, very, very remote. But conversely, I do want to say, there were family members, some of them I'm not too close with anymore, that they were, dead set against me donating my kidney. They couldn't wrap their mind around, you're going to do what? And you give an organ to a stranger? That doesn't make any sense. I can understand if it was a family member. But, I wasn't looking for their validation. I was just, informing them of what I was going to do. I hope that they, I was 46 years old as a detective. I did my research. I'm going to, New York Presbyterian, while Cornell, I would say world renowned, in the transplant world. So I thought they would have faith in me that I was making an educated decision. Some of them came around, some of them didn't. But, I tell the donors that I mentor, you definitely need the support of your immediate family, which I consider to be your spouse. My children, although they were young, were extremely supportive. I have now that 13-year-old boy-girl twins and a 9-year-old. And one of my kids, when I told them that I was going to donate my kidney, and I explained the whole process. We have 2. I said, you can give one away, and I said I could still, lead a healthy life, and I'm going to help someone. And I said, at the time, and every transplant center is different, but because of my job, I had to be out of work for 6 weeks because I couldn't lift anything more than 20 pounds for 6 weeks. So I, told my daughter, I said, I'm going to be out of work for 6 weeks. She's like, what? She goes, you're going to get a 6-week vacation for donating your kidney? And I said, well, I don't know if it's a vacation, but yeah, I'm going to get, 6 weeks off. She goes, oh, that's great. That's great. So, my wife is supportive, and so is my daughter.
Oh, that's so awesome. And you obviously shared this earlier. Your wife is also a living donor. And so there's something very wonderful about your family. And thank you
I
for
appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so guys, we're going to move forward, and basically we kind of skipped ahead to learning from our panelists. I like that because I think the way this workshop is honestly the most effective is by hearing from our panelists. So I'm glad we've kind of spoken throughout and getting some advice. I think if our panelists have any other pearls of wisdom that they would like to share to our attendees today, kind of like our closing notes, I would love it if Gisela, can I call upon you one last time, and then we'll have Mike wrap it up, because you guys really, you've been through it. So
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I won't deny my my advantage here, right? Like I'm on the other side of it, but I'd say that's to your advantage. And there's not a day that goes by that I wake up and I don't think about, wow, that like science is crazy. Like someone else's kidney is inside of me right now. Going through the pandemic, very self-aware of that, being immunocompromised. There are ups and downs, I would say, like in the process, but for me, my quality of life is so much better, and I'm back to just doing the things that I want to do, and being to help other people kind of help share their stories is really powerful. I'm trying to get that Excella private jet, whatever you want to call it, direct to just hang out in heaven. Like that's my goal. No, I'm just kidding. But like I think there's a real thing with being vulnerable that is just not, it's not celebrated. And something about social media is that I want to call out is like, if you're not on social media, because I was not on social media before. I was on Instagram, but I wasn't on Facebook. And I know a lot of people talk about Facebook for sharing their stories. Have someone else set up a page for you and focus on, you don't have to do all the things.
Yeah.
And also you probably can't, you won't do them all well. So just don't be afraid to ask for help and then delegate, and just, it's really hard, but just trust the process. And it can be, I have people go through the donor evaluation process and fail out, or tell me they fail out. And it is hard to hear that. I can't give you any advice on how to like cope with that, but just know like the right kidney will find you somehow if you are willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to keep saying that it won't just show up if people don't know that you need it. But if you can just remember that, pretend you're on fire, and that you're just trying to make sure that people know that there's a way for them to help you. Either they come in and they do the work, or they go get help for you, right? That's what you're asking people to do. You're not asking someone, hey, come give me that kidney. It will find you. I'm a firm believer in that. And it's not a marketing ploy. You're not trying to get someone to try that new Pepsi product. If you drive someone to that microsite, let them explore. You've already done the hard work. They can go find out everything they need to do. And like I said, the best thing that can happen is that they end up being your donor, but then also equally important, they share your story, and now 5 more people are aware. And I mean, there's some, go down the rabbit hole of kidney paired exchange, and you will hear like 8. I just met a patient who did an 8-way. He was part of an 8-way chain. That's some coordination there. That's 8 people, 8 living donors participating, and it was cross country. It was like all around. So that there's a lot to believe in. And the other thing, also, I was lucky enough to have Dr. Kapoor. He did my my surgery also. And the team at Weill Cornell is fantastic. And to this day, post-transplant, anytime something is wrong with me, I have a 24/7 number that I can call, and I'll be connected to a real person, and or they will call me back. And every time I show up in the ER, they're waiting for me and they know how to treat me. And I can tell you, after speaking to many patients from across the country, that is not a standard that exists. So you're in good hands.
Oh, thank you, Gisela. I love that you mentioned post-care and our team. And that's a really important thing. You know, you're not going to just get a transplant and be forgotten. We're going to be following you, and our post team is incredible. I love that you mentioned kind of, we haven't been using the term, but designating like a donor champion. So someone to offload the burden, someone to help you so you can stay healthy. And if you have that person in your life, maybe it's someone who wasn't able to donate directly to you, but that person can share, that person can be the social media leader for you. That's amazing. And I would recommend that every person who needs a transplant try and find someone like that who can be their partner, because it is a lot of work getting that story out there and sharing. So offload that burden. There are really good people out there in this world. I mean, I think we have some great examples on this webinar right now. So thank you so much. And yeah, Mike,
So,
batter up.
so first I want to say is, I was on one of the other screens, but this is so important. Do not rule anyone out. Don't take offense, but you are not a medical professional. Let Weill Cornell or the transplant team rule that donor out. So don't look at them and go, oh, they had this like 3 years ago, so they possibly can't donate. Everybody is a potential donor. Everyone you see, everyone that you share your story with is a potential donor. So that's really, really important. And the other thing is, I don't think we touched on it, and I think we're coming to the end. We didn't describe the voucher program at all, right? Or are you going to go into that? Because it's a major advantage to being at a center like Cornell. And I just want to make sure that the patients know they don't need to find someone that is the same blood type with them. So are we getting to that, or did you want to cover that, or do you want me to touch on it?
Go for it, because you know what,
Okay.
Eliza gave us like a little snippet about our program, but there's just so much to cover.
know.
And so please.
I'll keep it short.
Yeah.
So
of course.
the power of being at a center like Weill Cornell is there's 103 transplant centers in the National Kidney Registry. And if you are in Cornell, you have access to the other 102 transplant centers. So what does that mean? Basically, it's very simple. You just need to find someone that wants to donate for you, right? So we never encourage anyone to put their blood type on anything. I don't think that was even said, but I would strongly encourage you, do not put your blood type on anything. No t-shirt, no car, no nothing. Why? Because if I see, I'm A2. If I saw a B, I go, can't help them out. That's a B, I'm an A2. That is absolutely, positively false, right? Because of the voucher program. So what's the voucher program? You know, when you go into a deli and there's a tray of pennies, right? And it says, take a penny, give a penny. It's the same principle, right? There's this network, there's this pool of donors, but in order to have access to them as a patient, a donor has to put a kidney into the pool. So you get a kidney out of the pool if someone puts a kidney into the pool. So what does that mean? You share your story with this microsite or however else you share your story. Someone in California sees your story and says, you know what? I'd like to donate on behalf of this person. They could stay in California, they could donate in California, and they're going to put down Jane Doe as the person who receives what I like to call the Willy Wonka golden ticket, right? For the kidney. And they'll name you as a voucher holder. So what does that mean? That means Cornell gets to activate you in their system, and then you get a kidney out of the pool. It's I'm really making it very simple, but it's so important. And the voucher program, I think, is not known enough. I've been on like radio stations a few times, and they keep wanting me to talk about the voucher program because people never heard of it before. But that's the power. You know, finding the absolute direct match, that's very difficult. That's really the needle in the haystack. Finding someone willing to donate on your behalf, that's, I don't want to, dare I say, easier, but it's a lot easier than finding that needle in the haystack. So getting the microsite at Cornell, that goes all over the place. Like, again, they could donate anywhere they want. The donor does not have to come to New York. They could stay in any state that they live in. They could donate at an NKR center. And because they click that microsite link, that donation will be on behalf of you. How did I do with that, Elisa? Good?
You did great. And I mean, we didn't even speak about, remote donation. I know there was a question asked that Judith handled. So at the very beginning, when we talked about some unique opportunities at our program, I kind of touched on advanced donation, the voucher program, there's remote donation, obviously our microsite, there's Kidney for Life, there's a lot. So again, we want to do everything justice. So we kind of breeze through it. But Mike, I think you really simplified it. And I think one of the greatest things to mention about the voucher program is it gives the opportunity for advanced donation. So if this is a really great example, say the person who's going to donate to you also is going to be your caregiver, that allows for, the donor to donate and then the recipient can go at a later time. But again, there's just so much. I think you did a really great job in explaining it. And I think you're right. I don't think a lot of people know about it. So I really appreciate you bringing that up.
There'll be a press conference coming out actually on the 25th, because we're going to have our donor and our recipient meet for the first time. But the police officer, it's been public, so I'm not saying anything I shouldn't say, is a patient of Cornell's, received the transplant, and she was tested. The donor was tested to be a match, and she wasn't a match, and she cried because she wanted to help this police officer so badly. And then she was educated about the voucher program, and then she was overcome with joy, knowing that her kidney was going to go to someone in need right now today, and then the police officer would benefit. And what happened, you have to have faith, right? Faith in Cornell, you have to have faith in the National Kidney Registry, you have to have faith that the process will work, your posts, and it worked. Within a month of Cornell activating the patient, she received the kidney transplant. She's back in the subway system, patrolling as a New York City police officer. So the process works. Cornell is great. I don't know what else to say to end on such.
No, you did great. Thank you.
I think I'm going to simplify it even further.
Yeah.
Let your transplant center be the ones to worry about anything other than finding the donor.
Good job, Judith.
PBO doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. As long as they're emotionally and medically healthy, let us worry about the rest of it, because there are so many options within the systems now. This didn't exist at the turn of the century. This barely existed in 2010. This has all happened to living donation really since 2008 and on. So
Yeah.
and it just continues to evolve. So
how did I pass, Judith, with all those requirements? How did you guys clear me for donation?
ask Marion.
But Judith, you really nailed it down. Let the donor team, I am very biased. They are excellent, as well as our recipient team, but the donor team is excellent. Let them do their job. They are the ones looking out for the best intention of the donor. Don't rule anyone out because of blood type. We know blood type incompatibility is not a thing now because we have so many advances. And so our team is so equipped to make sure that you get the best match possible. So let them do their job. Your only job is to share your story, spread the word. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Judith. She's going to go over some of our resources to help. And, I'm sorry. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to Chelsea. She's going to go over some of the, no.
You're right.
Yeah, Judith. Sorry, guys.
So, we've said in the past that you're not alone. And even, neither you or the donor are alone. And there are other resources out there to help you. Any of the transplant centers is going to have a social worker designated to the donors. And there are all these different organizations. And I'm actually just bringing up a few here. The first one being NALDAC. So the National Living Donor Assistance Program. The one caveat with NALDAC is that the ability to be able to get this assistance does depend on the recipient's income. So it is sort of an application process. Now, even if you don't have your donor yet, it's a good idea. Find out, is there a possibility of the donor being able to be offered some financial support to be able to come to New York if that's their choice to do so? Travel, lodging, meals, that's both the evaluation and for the surgery visit could be covered. If you do qualify as the recipient, then that should be included in your story. Make sure that your donor is aware that there is some support, to the costs of them being able to do this. Next slide. And these are some others. The American Transplant Foundation, they offer financial assistance. This could be for lost wages. Your surgery yourself, you're probably only going to need to take a couple of days before that, but there is that period afterwards while you're recovering. Sometimes you could be back to work in 2 weeks as a donor. Sometimes it could be 6 weeks. If you're a luggage handler out at JFK, we're going to want to, make sure that you're fully healed. So, that could be a potential big loss of salary. The American Living Donor Network, these help living donors with both the financial cost of donating and the loss of wages during your recovery, flights, both evaluation and the surgery. They also actually have mentors to help with fundraising if there are any other costs that fall outside of this. The National Foundation for Transplant, this helps both donor and recipients financially throughout the entire the transplant experience. And they help by providing fundraising assistance. Now, you're not an expert. The social worker at the center will be able to direct you to who is going to be the most assistance. But again, if assistance is available, it's nice to know that you maybe have that before you even go in. I can see Mike just edging on his seat here. The National Kidney Registry, if you fall in certain programs, they're very, very generous with both wage loss and costs of travel and hotel and all the rest of it. But again, the social worker would be the one to be able to direct you. So that's Donor Shield with the National Kidney Registry. Next slide. So when I find a donor, what do I do? What we do is we have a donor screen process, and this is 4 or 5 pages asking not just the donor medical history, but also the family history. It's extremely comprehensive. That way, the donor coordinator will pick up this donor screen and they'll be able to review it. And if there are any red flags that we need more information about, then we're able to call and find out, can you give me a little bit more information about this? Or, when did you last see a doctor about this? Or whatever it may be. But this makes it very, very simple. We do not receive this donor screen, however, until it is completed. So if you've only got 3 out of 5 pages, then that's not going to reach us. Next slide. So again, the resources and education sources available, it's endless. It's like a rabbit hole you're going to fall into. These are just some of the few things that are available here at Cornell. I'll start with the Transplant Living website. Go, explore, learn. The National Kidney Foundation is a huge resource for patients. And our website, the SRTR, the transplant outcomes, what that is, that's a database for all the statistics and outcomes at all the centers in the United States. So if you want to go in there, you can get 3 days in finding out about how many patients get transplanted at that center, what's the average waiting time at that center. All that information is in there, and it is vast. As far as the Weill Cornell, there's a few things that we're doing right now. We currently have this conversation with Cornell Kidney, and they are webinars, and we hold those. It's on the last Tuesday and Wednesday of each month. And this is Eliza and myself. We cover all kinds of different topics, from living donation to being on a list and what do you do while you're waiting. We're actually adding a couple of topics this year, finance being one. And also a webinar literally for your support person. I don't think a lot of people realize how stressful it can be to be a support person for someone going through transplant evaluation and waiting for a donor. So that's another webinar that we're going to do. We also hold a support group. You know, it's a virtual world now, and so all this information is done on a virtual platform. And the support groups have been held it's the second Wednesday of each month at 10 a.m. in the morning. The Conversations with Cornell is taped and is available on our website, but the support groups, obviously that's sort of a live and very interactive thing. We just started the support group in January, and each month we're getting more and more people, and the same people, you know, the people that started are still coming, and it's a great conversation. All kinds of topics come up. And I think the people that have joined us so far are finding this extremely valuable. So that's something that I'm going to plug that Eliza and I have done. And then I was going to go back to the website, but our website offers just an incredible array of all kinds of education. Next slide. Voices in Transplant. This is what we have done is we have taken individuals, and this is all voluntary, but these individuals have done a little vignette about their experience either as a donor or as a recipient. On the right here, you'll see the bottom right-hand side, Sanique and her mom, what it was like being a parent going through this with your child that needs a transplant. And Sanique's mom was actually able to help her out. So there's all kinds of information available with this. Again, this is all at our website, and I strongly recommend just go in and if you can listen to other people's experiences and the little pitfalls and the things that they did to be able to get them through this extremely stressful process, then the more you know, the better off you'll be, and the less painful this whole process will be. Next slide. Eliza, you want to introduce Wayne?
Hi guys. Yeah. So I want to be mindful of the time. We're almost at our 2-hour mark. So we're just going to quickly show this Voices in Transplantation. I think the power of the patient voice and story is so incredible. And if these Voices in Transplantation can bring hope, inspiration to anyone, then we've done our job. So just want to share this, and then we're gonna kind of wrap it up because I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. So yeah, this is a short video.
My name is Wayne Temple. The date of my transplant was April 26, 2019. My wife is from England, and it was her birthday on the 25th of April. And that's the day I got the call, and I went in for the operation for her birthday. That was a nice birthday present. All she's known is me going to dialysis. She's never, we've never been together where I didn't have to go to dialysis. So this is a real life-changing thing for me. My biggest fear was that I'd never get one. After 8 years, I was like, I'll probably never get one, but I just want everybody to know you never give up hope, because eventually it comes around. Never give up hope. Go for your evaluations every year and just be ready, because like I said, it can come at any time and when you least expect it. So you really just stay vigilant and follow your doctor's orders. It's really changed a lot because now I'm able to travel. I'm able to do things that I wasn't able to do. I can eat things that I wasn't able to eat before. And like I said, for 11 years, I've been restricted. And now it's almost like I'm free again. Staff is conscientious. They're very sensitive to your needs. And that's one of the things that people fear about coming to hospitals, that, people aren't attentive to what you need. And I find it the total opposite here. Everybody's friendly, courteous, and very attentive to the needs of the patient. The staff is great, PAs are great, the nurses, the doctors. For a hospital, this is the best hospital I've ever been in. I've been in a few. This is definitely a top.
Okay, guys, so I'm just going to quickly go through ways you can connect with us. Chances are you probably saw this event on our social media, and we have an Instagram, a Facebook, a YouTube, a Twitter, and just connect with us if you would like to. It's a good way to stay up to date with new policies, education, patient stories. I mean, hearing someone who's gone through the process, it really can change your outlook. It can bring hope. You can learn from their story. So I appreciate Judith highlighting the patient stories we have on our website. The National Kidney Foundation resources you got sent. So I'm just going to quickly breeze through those because I want to be mindful of everyone's time. And I want to just make sure we touch on creating an action plan. So after this webinar wraps up, you can go through your worksheet. So you can write your story. You can start thinking of strategies. You can build your network of advocates. You can talk to people. You can contact us, our team, for more information. And then if you want extra support, you can contact NKF Cares. Every one of our panelists would be, I can speak for everyone, would be more than happy to take a moment out of our day to talk to you if you want further information. So please reach out to us. And that is the Big Ask Big Give. We covered these 7 key strategies, and I hope you found this webinar fruitful and learned a lot. And any feedback you have, please share it with us. We always want to keep improving, and yeah, we appreciate you taking the time. I know it wasn't a short webinar. This is a long 2 hours. Sitting in front of a computer is not a simple task. So if you stuck with us the whole time, I really appreciate it. And yeah, I want to thank everyone for joining. So thank you. Chelsea, do you have any words?
No, thank you all so much. And we will be sending a follow-up email that has the evaluation in it. And then we will be sending a second follow-up email that does have the resources outlined for you again, in case there's anything that you're looking for. But feel free to reach out to any of us at NKF. We're here for whatever you need. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys. All right, have a great day. Enjoy the beautiful weather. If you're on the East Coast, get outside today. Vitamin D, but wear sunscreen. Bye.